So welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we'll be discussing about a skeletal. So bones are connective tissues which consist of 25% water, organic constituents, especially carbon containing part of the matrix and also the cells, and also the inorganic constituents of calcium and phosphate, which make up 50% of the total percentage of the bone. So the main functions of the bone, the main functions of the bone first, it provides the framework for body, gives attachment to muscles and tendons, also permits some movements of the body as a whole, also form parts of the boundaries of the cranium, thoracic, pelvic, also protecting the organs they contain. Also they contain the red bone marrow, which is responsible for blood cells development through the hematopoiesis process. Also provide a reservoir of minerals, especially the calcium. And so there are usually two types or different types of bone. We usually have the long bones, the short bones. So the long bones consist of the shaft and two extremities, for example the femur bone. So the femur bone consists of the shaft and also the tibia and fibula. So these are the long bones, bones. So also the short bones, which consist or sometimes the short, irregular, flat and sesamoid bones, they have no shaft or extremities, and usually they are diverse in shape and size. They usually form the short form bones, especially of the carpals, metacarpals. These are the short, irregular, flat bones, which are also the sesamoid bones. The regular bones forms the skull bones. Also, they form those are the bones of the vertebrae, which are also irregular. Bones of the vertebrae, they are usually irregular. And some of the also bones of the skull, and also when you say the bones which are sesamoid, we call the bones of the patella. The patella bones forms the sesamoid type of the bones. You'll find long bones, especially on the arms. These are the long bones. These are the long bones. And also the legs, you can have the femur and also the tibia and the fibula. So they usually, as layers inside, they usually have the periosteum layer for oppositional growth, and also they are compact layer for rigidity. They usually have the cancellous or spongy layer for inner support, and also the bone marrow or the marrow support for calcium the blood forming cells. So they are responsible whereby it involves in growth, and also where we have the growth taking place in the epiphyseal disc. Also the blood supply is from the nutritional arteries, which forms gives the periosteal artery supplying the periosteum, and also epiphyseal arteries, which now gives nutrients. Also we have the short bones. They don't have marrow cavity. They don't have contained epiphyses. They are cuboid and tubular in shape, and they are usually found on the wrist. So these are some of the bones that are usually short. They usually form on the sheath, that is the carpals inside the wrist, and also the tarsals on the legs. They usually form the tarsals on the leg. So flat bones, these usually they are flat and thin, and usually for protection, and also the body surface for muscles attachment. They are usually found in the cranium. These are types of the flat bones which are found in the cranium, the pectoral girdles or the scapula, and also the ilium, and also the sternum. These are the flat. Also the irregular bones, they are specialized for shape and functional support, the weight of the body. They are usually found in the spinal column and also the vertebrae bodies. The sesamoid bones, they are usually small bones with a tendon or a joint capsule. They are found usually on the knee, so you find them on the knee. The hand, so these are some of the phalanges here. These are the phalanges and also the patella. They are usually the sesamoid because they usually form thin and embedded with the tendon and also on the joints capsule, which alters the angle of insertion and also reduces frictions when it comes to move. So bone development usually begins before birth and it's usually not complete until about 21st year of life. When you are 21 years, all the bones are usually complete. So the long, short and irregular develop usually from the roots of the cartilage, usually the cartilage modes. The flat bones develop from the membrane models and also the sesamoid bones develop from the tendon models. So those are how the bones are. So there are usually some hormones which are very responsible for when it comes to regulation of the bone growth. So the first hormone is the growth hormone and also the thyroid hormone, which is especially important when it comes to or during infancy and childhood. And also the second one is the testosterone or estrogen hormone, which influence the physical changes that occur during puberty. And also we usually have the calcitonin and the parathyroid hormone, which aid in hemostasis of blood and also make sure that calcium levels are within the normal range within the body or the bone development. So those are some of the important hormones that regulate the bone growth. So usually in an adult usually consists of 206 bones which are well formed. So the divisions, there are usually two divisions of the bones of the human skeleton. So we usually have the axial skeleton and the perpendicular skeleton. So the axial skeleton consists of the bones of the skull bones. So sometimes known as the cranial or cranium. So these are the skull bones which consist of the axial. Also consist of the sternum bones, the ribs, and also the vertebral column. So these are some of the types or divisions of the bones. The axial the skeleton consists of the sternum, consists of the ribs, consists of the skull bones, and also consists of the vertebral column. So let's look at this, the cranial bones. So it rests on the upper part of the vertebral column, which is a bony structure which is divided into two parts, the cranium and the face. So we usually have the cranium and the facial. So this is the cranium or the skull, which consists of the facial and also the cranium bones. So inside this bone usually have a thinner layer of the outer meningeal covering, which is the dura mater, which now covers the membranes of the brain. So these skull bones, especially the cranium, is formed by a flat or an irregular bones that provide the bony protection, especially the brain. So it has a base upon which now the brain rests and a fold that surrounds it. So this is the fold which now surrounds the cranium. So inside the skull bones, we usually have a periosteum, which is consists of the outer covering of the dura mater, especially the meningeal. So in a mature skull, joints usually have sutures. So usually have a suture, which is between the bones, whereby it allows some movements, or which are usually fibrous, the usual fibrous, which now allow some movement. So the bones of the cranium consists of the the frontal bone, parietal bones, which are two on the other side, the temporal bone, and also the occipital bones. So these are the bones of the cranial. So we usually have the sphenoid bone, and also the lacrimal bone inside, and also the orbital bone, and also the nasal bone, zygomatic bone, and also the maxilla, and also the mandible, which is the only movable joint. So inside the facial bone, usually have sinuses which contain air, usually present in the sphenoid, that is the sphenoid, the ethmoid, and also the maxilla and the frontal bones, which gives resonance when it comes to voice, and also lighten the bones of the facial and the cranium, making it easier for the head to balance the top of the vertebral column. Then we have the vertebral column, which consists of different parts of the bone. So the first vertebral bone, the vertebral column bone on the cervical vertebrae is the atlas, which is the first one. Then the second one is the axis. So usually have seven cervical vertebrae. Then we have 12 vertebrae of the thoracic vertebrae. Then we have 5 lumbar, 5 fused bones of the sacrum, and 4 fused bones of the coccyx. So these are the coccyx bones. These are the sacral bones, which consist of the 5 fused, and the coccyx consists of 4 fused. The main function of this vertebral column first is it has some foramina from which the vertebral column or canal, which provides the strong bony protection of the delicate spinal cord, especially when it passes through this area. Also, it has some pedicles on the adjacent vertebrae, which forms the intervertebral foramina, which is on each side of the bone, which now gives attachment for the spinal nerves to pass. And also, it has some numerous bones, individual bones, which enable them to aid in some amount of movement. Also supports the skull when it comes to the weight. Also, it has some intervertebral disc for shock absorbers, which protects the brain. Also forms the axis of the trunk, which gives attachment to the ribs and also the shoulder girdle. So those are the parts of the vertebrae or the vertebral column. Then we have also part of the axis, which consists of the ribs. They are 12 in number. So we shall have the collarbone, or sometimes known as clavicle. Then we shall have the 12 pairs of ribs, which now they are attached to the sternum by some cartilages, which is very important when it comes to, and also for muscles attachment. So we usually have some cartilages in between the sternum and the ribs. They are usually 12 in pairs in number. An individual has always 12 pairs of the ribs. So the ribs are very important. So on the sternum, we usually have the parts, the manubrium, the body, and the symphoid process. So this is the symphoid process. We usually have the 3 parts of the sternum, which is attached together with the ribs. So these are the ribs which now aid when it comes to ventilation and respiration. So especially on the ribs, we usually have 10 pairs that are usually attached to the anterior sternum by these cartilages, which are some are directly, some are indirectly. You can see these are indirectly, others are directly attached to the sternum by this cartilage. So there are only 2 pairs of the bone. You can see these 2 pairs. So the only two pairs are usually floating. They are not attached to any part of the sternum by the cartilage. They are usually floating ribs. We usually call them the floating ribs, which are only the 2 pairs. So the 2 pairs are usually floating ribs. Then on the appendicular skeleton, we usually have different parts. So it consists of the shoulder girdle, which consists of the clavicle and also the scapula. So clavicle and scapula is part of the pelvic girdle. So this is the shoulder girdle, which consists of the scapula or the rest bone, the collarbone and the scapula. So these the parts of the appendicular skeleton. Then the upper and the lower extremities. The upper and lower extremities are also parts of the appendicular skeleton. Also the pelvic girdle. So this is the pelvic girdle, which consists of 2 innominate bones with so on the upper limb, we usually have the humerus. This is the humerus, follows by the tibia, the radius and ulna. Then we usually have the 8 carpals and 5 metacarpals, and also the 14 phalanges. We usually have 14 phalanges on the upper ribs. So this is the parts of the upper limb, which is part of the appendicular skeleton. Consists of the humerus, consists of the ulnar radius, and also consists of the 8 carpal bones, the 5 metacarpals, and 14 phalanges. On the sacrum, we have said that it consists of 2 innominate bones and 1 sacrum. So we usually have 2 innominate bones and the sacrum. So 2 innominate bones and the sacrum. So sacrum is on the other hand. So you have 2 innominate bones, which are the ilium, ischium, and the pubis. So ilium, ischium, and the pubis, and also the sacrum, which is on the posterior part. We have the lower extremities, which consist of femur, which consists of the femur. So this is the femur part, and also this is the tibia and fibula, and also the 7 tarsus, 5 metacarpals, metatarsals, and 14 phalanges. So these are the parts of the lower extremities. So the only difference is that we usually have 7 tarsus, and on the upper extremities we have 8 carpals. So 8 carpals on the upper extremities, 8 tarsals, 7 tarsals on the lower extremity. And also the patella, which is part also of the lower extremities, the patella. So on this, the human skeleton, they usually have some different joints. First type of the joints is the flexible, the fixed joints, which are usually on the skull bones, the teeth, especially the maxilla and the mandible. And also the second one is the slightly movable or the cartilaginous bone, usually found on the pubis symphysis. So these are some of the parts of the cartilaginous joints. So the first one is the fibrous, which does not allow any movement or no movement. Then the slightly movement or the cartilaginous joints, they are usually found in the pubis symphysis. Then we usually have the freely movable joints, especially which allow some range of movements. They are usually categorized in different categories. We usually have the ball and socket. Ball and socket usually found on the shoulder and the hip. So the shoulder and the hip, they usually allow some the abduction, rotation, and also circumduction, and also extension. Then the second type of the synovial joint is the hinge joint. They are usually found on the wrist. The wrist joints, the occipital joint together and articulating with the joints of the atlas, and also the phalanges and the knee or the elbow. So the elbow bone, this allows some hinge type of synovial joint. The third one is the gliding gliding joint, which is a type of the synovial joint, which allows some movement, especially the movements, especially on the the carpals, the movement on the carpals and the tarsals. Then usually have the pivot joint, which is a type of the synovial joint, especially allows some rotation, especially on one axis, which is usually found on the joint of the atlas, which articulates together with the chondroid process of the axis. So between the axis and the atlas, we usually have the pivot joint, and then the last is the sandal joint, which is a type of synovial joint. So they usually found in the wrist. So we call it the sandal. Usually found on the metaphalangeals, and also metatarsal phalangeals, metacarpophalangeal joints. They are usually found as the type of. So that's just a brief overview of the skeletal, of the human skeletal, which consists of different parts. So feel free to ask any questions and also clarifications. I'll also clarify any parts that you need more clarifications. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my YouTube channel.